Welcome to today's historical deep dive. We often look at history's titans and see only the statues, the grand victories, the sweeping narratives. But what if we zoomed in on a single, audacious act? A moment so bold, so utterly personal, that it changed the course of centuries and revealed the very heart of a legend. What if we witnessed the instant a man didn't just become emperor, but declared himself emperor, defying tradition, God, and expectations all at once? If you love immersive, real storytelling about ambition and downfall, hit like and subscribe. It helps us more than you know. Drop a comment with your favorite Napoleon quote or the moment that shocked you most. Let's begin and change the way you think about history. You stand in Notre Dame, December 2nd, 1804. The air is thick with the scent of incense and the electric charge of anticipation. Sunlight streams through stained glass, illuminating the vast assembly of dignitaries, generals, and the curious elite of a newly reshaped France. At the altar, Pope Pius VII sits expectant, draped in pontifical robes, holding the heavy, bejeweled imperial crown. This moment, steeped in over 1,000 years of European tradition, is meant to legitimize your reign through ancient ritual and divine sanction. It is the Church, in the person of God's representative on earth, placing the mark of destiny upon your head. But that is not how this story unfolds. You approach the altar, not with the humble reverence expected of a monarch receiving his mandate, but with the controlled stride of a conqueror surveying his spoils. Your gaze meets the Pope's, then shifts, not towards the pontiff, but past him, reaching out with purpose. You take the weighty symbol of power, not from his hands, but directly from the altar where it rested. A clear statement that no intermediary, no institution confers this authority upon you. The assembly holds its breath, a collective gasp echoing in the cavernous space. This scene is not merely a change of rulers. It's a seismic shift in the very concept of power. By taking the crown and placing it upon your own head, then crowning Empress Josephine, you declare for all the world to see that your authority flows not from God, bloodline, or even the venerable Church, but solely from your own will, ambition, and achieved destiny. The insight here is stark, breathtaking in its arrogance. You believe true power is self-made, seized by strength and intellect, not granted by others. This audacious act sets the stage for everything that follows: the dazzling glory, the relentless expansion, and ultimately the catastrophic ruin. It's the ultimate statement of ambition unchecked, a moment that dictates your entire imperial path, and ironically, plants the first seed of your eventual fall. Ask yourself, was this moment the ultimate display of self-belief, or was it the first undeniable sign of blinding hubris? The cold stones of Brienne Military School bite through your thin boots. You are a boy of 10, your French thick with the accent of Corsica, an island only recently swallowed by France. They call you names: Corsican savage, La Paille Honnête, straw in the nose, a childish corruption of Bonaparte. The slights are constant, sharp pinpricks against a raw, sensitive ego. You are the outsider, the one who doesn't belong among the sons of the French aristocracy. They see a rough, dark-haired youth. You see a world that underestimates you. But within this crucible of isolation, a fire is being forged. This isn't just hurt, it's fuel. You retreat not into despair, but into books. While others play, you devour Plutarch, Caesar, the histories of great empires. The rules of warfare become less about drill and more about geometry, a subject you excel at, seeing patterns and angles where others see only chaos. You absorb the lessons of past conquerors, dissecting their triumphs and failures, recognizing the eternal levers of human nature: fear, greed, ambition, loyalty. You are building an inner world, sharper and more strategic than the superficial society that rejects you. This period is less about mastering military tactics, though you do that with chilling precision, and more about mastering yourself and understanding others. The perceived weakness of your background becomes your shield and your sword. It forces you to rely entirely on your intellect and your will. You weren't born into privilege. You must earn every inch, every rank, through sheer relentless drive. This relentless ambition isn't a gentle flame. It's an inferno, fueled by every past insult, every closed door, every sneer. It's a surprising truth about your early life. The future master of Europe was first a master of turning grievance into relentless self-improvement. It's a stark lesson in the power of a powerful will. Humble beginnings, marginalization, being the perpetual outsider, these weren't impediments as much as they were the hammer and anvil that shaped your resolve into something unbreakable. While the sons of nobles coasted on lineage, you were sharpening your mind like a blade, preparing for a fight they didn't even know was coming. Ask yourself, what would you have done faced with such isolation and scorn at a young age? Would you have broken, or would you, like this ambitious young Corsican, have used the pressure to forge an inner strength capable of changing the world? The takeaway is clear, and history screams it. Never underestimate the fire in the belly of the outsider. It might just consume the established world order you thought was so secure. You are not just learning history. You are witnessing the birth of a force of nature. Cannons roar on the hills overlooking Toulon. The British fleet, arrogant and anchored, holds the key to the city. The Revolutionary Army, a chaotic mix of zeal and inexperience, falters. Then, a young, sickly artillery officer, barely old enough to shave, steps forward. You see the map differently. While others argue over conventional assaults, you identify the crucial promontory, L'Aiguillette, that controls the harbor. Take that point, you insist, your voice surprisingly sharp amidst the clamor. And we control the harbor. Control the harbor, and the British fleet must flee. This isn't just military tactics. It's a gamble on audacity. You don't wait for orders. You rally men, scavenge cannons, and personally direct the placement under enemy fire. A British bayonet finds your thigh, a wound that leaves a scar but deepens your bond with the soldiers who see your blood spilled alongside theirs. This isn't a distant general sending orders from the rear. This is a leader sharing the dirt, the danger, the fear. You sleep in trenches, eat their meager rations, and speak their language of survival and glory. You are with them. The assault on L'Aiguillette is brutal, but successful. The French batteries open fire, raking the British ships. Just as you predicted, the fleet, fearing annihilation, weighs anchor and abandons Toulon. The city falls. You, the unknown officer, have just won a pivotal victory for the Republic. This is your first thunderclap on the European stage, a baptism of fire that instantly elevates you from obscurity to necessity. The pattern repeats in Italy. The Directory gives you command of at Lodi Bridge. Facing a storm of Austrian grapeshot, your troops hesitate. Crossing that narrow bridge is suicide. Yet you seize a flag, stride onto the bridge yourself, urging them forward. Your generals pull you back, but the point is made. Seeing their commander defy death, the grenadiers surge, taking the bridge in a desperate, bloody charge. It's not the most tactically brilliant maneuver. Sheer willpower overcomes overwhelming odds. It's here, amidst the carnage of Lodi, that your soldiers begin calling you the Little Corporal, a term of affection born of shared hardship and your surprising informality mixed with fierce resolve. At Arcole, the story is similar. A bridge, an enemy stronghold, hesitation. You once again grab a standard, placing yourself at the head of the column. While this attempt is famously repulsed and you are thrown into a marsh, requiring rescue, the intent burns into the minds of your men. You demand courage because you show it, visibly, repeatedly. This era is a masterclass in leadership built on demonstrable results. You don't rely on lineage or political connections, though you cultivate them later. Your early power flows directly from victory. Each battle won is a stone laid in the foundation of your authority. You are indispensable because you deliver what the desperate republic needs: tangible, bloody triumphs against seemingly impossible odds. While the Directory in Paris schemes and debates, you are in Italy, forging an army, conquering territory, and sending back crates of treasure. Here is the surprising truth. You are not the only competent general, but you are perhaps the only one willing to risk everything, including your own life, to achieve victory, and crucially, to ensure your achievements were recognized. You meticulously crafted dispatches highlighting your successes, often exaggerating numbers or downplaying the roles of others. But the core victories were undeniable. You understood that in the chaos of revolution, perception was power, and results shaped perception. Ask yourself, was this fearless leadership rooted in genuine bravery, or a calculated understanding that visible courage was the fastest way to earn the loyalty of men who had seen too many officers hide behind maps? What does it mean when the voice that rises above the political noise is the thunder of cannons echoing your name? This period proves a stark, brutal lesson. Competence, proven on the battlefield and leveraged ruthlessly, is the swiftest path to power when the old world has burned away. Your early legitimacy wasn't granted, it was taken, victory by victory. France drifts, a rudderless ship on a stormy sea of political corruption. The Directory, a collection of tired, grasping hands, presides over decay, their authority thin as parchment. You land back on French soil from Egypt, the desert dust still clinging to your boots, but the scent of opportunity sharper than any sandstorm. The moment is not just ripe, it's overripe, bursting, waiting only for a hand audacious enough to pluck it. This is your hand. You orchestrate the coup of 18 Brumaire. It's meant to be swift, bloodless, a mere transfer of power from the legislative bodies to a strong executive you will control. But history, you find, rarely unfolds according to script. Before the Council of Ancients, your words catch, a stammering stumble where you intended thunder. You falter, momentarily losing the thread, an uncharacteristic flash of nerves, betraying the planned composure. It's awkward, almost pathetic. The great general, fumbling his political debut, downstairs with the more volatile council of 500, the air turns violent. They recognize the threat, surge towards you, calling you outlaw, dictator. Hands reach for you, tearing at your clothes, raw, physical fear and rage in their eyes. You are physically threatened, pulled into the chaos you sought to control. For a heart-stopping moment, The whole enterprise teeters on the brink of failure, potentially ending not in power, but in the ignominy of political assassination. It's Lucian, your brother, president of the 500, who grabs the moment. He rushes out, spins a tale to the waiting troops. Assassins attacked his brother. Then, Murat, the cavalryman, provides the blunt argument. With bayonets fixed, he orders the soldiers to clear the hall. The glinting steel provides a chilling clarity amidst the political fog. The deputies flee, scattering like leaves before a storm. The halls are emptied. The coup, clumsy, nearly disastrous, is saved by quick thinking, familial loyalty, and brute military force. You seize power, not as king, not yet emperor, but as first consul, the face of a new executive. Your promise to a nation yearning for stability, order, authority, an end to the revolutionary chaos. You offer the iron fist France secretly craves. This moment, Brumaire, highlights a brutal truth about political power grabs. They are often less about perfect, cerebral execution and more about decisive action when the state is fragile, a blend of careful planning, raw audacity, sheer luck, and the willingness to use force when needed. The insight: power doesn't always arrive polished. Sometimes it's a messy scramble through a broken window. Ask yourself, in that chaotic chamber, facing down fury, feeling the hands on your clothes, would your nerve have held? What would you have done when the elegant plan dissolved into a brawl? The takeaway is sharp. Fortune favors the bold, yes, but even the boldest need allies, or at least brothers with quick wits and generals with bayonets ready. You learn that leadership isn't just about strategy. It's about surviving the moments when everything goes wrong. The dust settles from the coup, but France is far from calm. You step into the vacuum, not as a general on campaign, but as first consul, inheriting a nation fractured by revolution, burdened by debt, and yearning for stability. The chaos that birthed you now demands order. And here, away from the roar of cannons, you reveal a different kind of genius, the architect of the state. This period isn't about conquering kings. It's about conquering dysfunction. You understand instinctively that true, lasting power isn't just taken, it's built on foundations. Your ambition shifts from the battlefield to the drafting table, the council chamber. You become the tireless administrator, working late, demanding efficiency. The Bank of France is established, a granite pillar of financial stability in a volatile economy, a crucial step in national consolidation. The centralized administration, a finely tuned machine, extends the state's reach into every corner of France, replacing provincial chaos with unified control. But your masterpiece, the enduring symbol of this era, is the Civil Code, the Code Napoleon. You preside over its creation, pushing, guiding, ensuring clarity and uniformity. It's a rationalization of law, sweeping away feudal remnants, enshrining principles of property rights, family structure, and individual liberty, within limits, of course. It's not just a legal document, it's a social contract, a blueprint for modern French society that will spread its influence across continents. This wasn't the act of a warmonger. It was the meticulous work of a system builder. Then comes the Concordat with the Catholic Church. After a decade of revolutionary anti-clericalism, you recognize the power of faith and tradition. It's a pragmatic reconciliation. The state acknowledges the Church, and the Church in turn largely accepts the revolutionary land seizures and promises loyalty. It infuriates hardliners on both sides, but it stitches a major tear in the social fabric, bringing millions back into reluctant allegiance to the state you lead. It's a cynical stroke of political genius, buying social peace at the price of a formal handshake with the institution the revolution tried to dismantle. France begins to breathe easier under this firm hand. Commerce revives, confidence returns. The gains of the revolution: equality before the law, for men at least, abolition of feudal privilege, are consolidated, not discarded. You are proving that your capacity extends far beyond military strategy. You are constructing the institutions, the legal framework, the administrative backbone that will define France for centuries. This era offers a profound insight. Sustainable power isn't just about breaking the old. Your legacy isn't built solely on Austerlitz or Wagram, but just as much on the articles of the Civil Code, the vaults of the Bank of France, the enduring structure of the French state. Ask yourself, could you have transitioned from the adrenaline of command to the patience of governance? What does it take to build, not just conquer? The title of First Consul for life rings in your ears, a position of unparalleled power in the wake of the revolution. You command armies, reshape laws, rebuild a broken nation. Surely this is enough? Yet sleep comes hard. The old monarchies, scattered across Europe like stubborn chess pieces, still whisper usurper. They see you not as the state builder, but the temporary guardian of chaos. Your very life is a perpetual target. Bombs explode, plots are uncovered. Each conspiracy, each Bourbon sympathizer caught, reinforces a gnawing truth. The stability you forged is balanced precariously on your single life. Without a dynasty, without the aura of legitimate hereditary succession that the old world understands, your magnificent structure feels vulnerable. The Republic, saved and rebuilt by your hand, seems too fragile a vessel to carry the weight of your legacy or withstand the inevitable storms after your death. You gaze at the map, the vast territory now under your influence. How to shield it? How to make the gains of the revolution irreversible? The answer crystallizes, audacious and chilling. You must become what you overthrew. Not a king of the old Bourbon line. No, something grander. Something born of the revolution itself, yet imbued with an authority that rivals, even surpasses, the ancient crowns. An emperor. It isn't merely personal vanity you tell yourself, or maybe you genuinely believe it in the quiet hours. It is a necessity of state, a shield against counter-revolution, a declaration to the world that France, and your France, is here to stay, anchored by a power as unassailable as any dynasty. But logic is seductive. Elevate the form of power to protect its function, even if the new form tragically echoes the past the revolution fought to bury. Here is the subtle, bitter irony. To secure the gains of a revolution that dethroned kings, you must crown yourself. You frame it as protecting the people from chaos, from foreign enemies, from internal plots. You claim absolute power is necessary for their security, for the stability of the state you've rebuilt. But the chilling insight, visible only with the distance of history, is that power, once attained, prioritizes its own perpetuation above all else. It elevates form, the title, the dynasty, the ceremony, often overshadowing the original purpose or principles it claimed to serve. This move wasn't just Napoleon's ambition, it was power seeking its ultimate fortification. So, you make the decision. The Senate, carefully packed with your loyalists, offers the crown. A plebiscite is held, manipulated, yes, but reflecting a genuine weariness with instability among many French. The path is cleared. The boy who came from Corsica, who dared to dismantle empires, now prepares to build one of his own, believing it the only way to preserve everything. Ask yourself, when a leader tells you their absolute authority is for your safety, for the nation's security, who is it truly protecting? The throne beckons, promising not just power, but permanence. You've guided France from chaos, brought order, defeated coalitions. Now you stand at the precipice, gazing at the ultimate prize. Consul for life wasn't enough. The next logical step, in your mind, the one that secures the dynasty, solidifies the power, is empire. But you are a son of the revolution, supposedly beholden to the will of the people. So you don't just take the crown, you ask for it. You orchestrate a plebiscite. Across France, the question is put to the populace. Should Napoleon Bonaparte be named Emperor of the French? Millions cast their votes. The official count is a masterpiece of overwhelming consent. Millions upon millions voting yes, with a laughably small number recorded as no or abstaining. It's a statistical anomaly so perfect, it screams fabrication. Was this the genuine roar of a grateful nation, or a carefully rehearsed performance on a national stage? Propaganda machines honed under your regime saturate the nation. Newspapers sing your praises. Artists depict you as the indispensable savior, the only man capable of guaranteeing the stability France so desperately craves after years of turmoil. The message is clear, relentless. Embrace the empire. Embrace you. The popular mandate you claim is built on a foundation of carefully manufactured public opinion and a vote count massaged into submission. This act reveals a crucial, sometimes overlooked, aspect of even absolute power. You hold the levers of control, the army, the bureaucracy, the police. You could simply declare yourself emperor and crush dissent. Yet you crave the appearance of popular legitimacy. You understand that power is stronger when it feels willed by the governed, even if that will is coerced or manipulated. It's the subtle difference between a tyrant who merely rules by force and a ruler who seeks, however disingenuously, the consent of the ruled. The plebiscite is not a true democratic exercise. It's a grand piece of political theater, a performance designed to justify an autocratic power grab with the veneer of national endorsement. This is the core insight. Even at the zenith of your control, you needed the lie of the people's backing. It highlights how the forms of democracy, the vote, the appeal to the populace, can be adopted and twisted to serve fundamentally undemocratic ends. The mechanism of the plebiscite is present, but its spirit, the genuine freedom of choice and expression, is entirely absent, suffocated by control and propaganda. Ask yourself, when you see a leader appealing directly to the people today, bypassing traditional checks and balances, is it genuine connection or a modern performance echoing the drums of your engineered consent? What would it take for you to believe a manipulated outcome? The careful student of history learns to look beyond the official count, beyond the cheering crowds, to see the context, the control, and the subtle, yet powerful, hand of manipulation at work. The air in Paris crackles with orchestrated anticipation. December 2nd, 1804. Every cobblestone, every draped banner, every strategically placed soldier is a deliberate stroke in a masterpiece of political theater. Notre Dame awaits, transformed from a revolutionary temple of reason back into a cathedral, but one repurposed for a new kind of divinity, the divinity of your own will. Preparations for this day, your coronation, have been years in the making, culminating in a spectacle designed not merely to mark a transition, but to engrave it onto the very soul of France and the watching world. You decree the details with relentless precision. The route through Paris is meticulously planned, a processional path designed for maximum visibility, ensuring the citizens see the imperial family, the assembled might, the blending of old symbols, the eagles, the bees, with the new authority. David, the revolutionary artist turned imperial chronicler, is tasked with capturing the moment for posterity, his canvas already a future monument of propaganda, ensuring the image of the coronation is as enduring as the event itself. Dignitaries from across Europe, military heroes, civil leaders, all are summoned, their presence a tacit acknowledgement, or perhaps a reluctant submission to your burgeoning power. But the true masterstroke, the audacious demand that underscored your absolute control, was the presence of Pope Pius VII, dragging the reluctant pontiff across the Alps to Paris was an act of unparalleled psychological warfare. He is here, not to legitimize you by placing the crown upon your head, a tradition that implied the Church's authority over temporal rulers, but to validate the setting. His sacred presence lends an ancient aura to your modern power grab. It says, even God's representative acknowledges this new order, even if he chafes under its weight. You don't need his blessing to rule, but his participation to reign with the weight of tradition, while simultaneously subverting it. This entire elaborate ballet reveals a profound, almost cynical understanding of power. It isn't just built with armies and laws. It is performed with symbols, projected through ceremony, solidified by propaganda. You understood instinctively that power doesn't merely exist behind palace walls. It must be seen, felt, believed. The coronation is not just an event. It is a multi-act play where you are both the director and the star, choreographing every gesture, every symbol to convey a single, undeniable message. Authority resides here, now, with you, sanctioned by history, the revolution, and yes, even the reluctant church. Consider this: how much of the power structures we live under today are still rooted in such deliberate staging, in the careful crafting and projection of an image intended to awe and command assent. What spectacles in our modern world are designed to perform power rather than simply wield it? The carriage rolls, a jewel in a river of steel and velvet. Cavalry gleams, their polished cuirasses mirroring the gray winter sky. A dazzling display, crafted with meticulous precision, fills the streets of Paris. This isn't just a parade. It is the physical manifestation of power consolidating, marching towards an ancient heart. You sit beside Josephine, the center of this magnificent, orchestrated theater, feeling the weight of history press down. Expectations surge from the crowds lining the route. Hope, awe, and perhaps, for some, a quiet unease. Across the borders, old Europe watches with unconcealed skepticism, murmuring about upstarts and shattered traditions. All paths converge on Notre Dame. This cathedral, scarred but not broken by the revolutionary storm that swept away kings and priests, awaits its new master. Repurposed from neglect, It stands ready to sanctify an authority born not of divine right or noble blood, but of sheer will and military might. The air crackles, thick with the tension of a nation holding its breath, witnessing a transformation that feels both inevitable and astonishing. You step down from the carriage, the cheers a deafening wave, and walk towards those ancient doors. Entering Notre Dame that day was far more than just a physical act. It was a profound, symbolic passage. With every step down the long aisle, you walked away from the ghost of the Republic, leaving behind the title of First Citizen. You were marching inexorably towards empire, towards the mantle of sovereign, a title, not inherited, but seized. This was the deliberate, public ritual designed to solidify a new reality in the minds of millions. The crown Napoleon would place upon his own head wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a physical declaration that his power answered to no one, not even the Pope, who sat watching, a silent guest at the undoing of centuries of papal authority. The true insight here lies in understanding that great turning points are often cemented not just by decrees or battles, but by these carefully staged public ceremonies. They are the visible architecture power builds to make itself feel real, permanent, and legitimate. This coronation revealed Napoleon's intentions and his self-image more clearly than any political speech ever could. He wasn't merely taking a title. He was staging a lineage, connecting himself to Rome, to Charlemagne, positioning himself as a successor to emperors, not merely a president for life. Consider the audacity. The man who rose from Corsican obscurity, a product of meritocracy and revolution, now wraps himself in the most traditional monarchical symbols imaginable. Was this shrewd pragmatism, recognizing the need for legitimacy in a world of kings? Or was it the first betrayal of the revolutionary spirit, a concession to ego and a thirst for absolute power? Ask yourself, what did this ceremony truly signify? The apex of his brilliance, or the moment the revolutionary swallowed the monarch? The ceremony concludes, the title is taken, but the echo of those footsteps in Notre Dame lingers. December 2nd, 1804, Notre Dame Cathedral, Paris. The air hangs thick with incense and the weight of history. Two men stand at the heart of a spectacle designed to legitimize a revolution-born regime through the oldest traditions of power. One is the Pope, Pius VII, embodying centuries of divine right and papal authority, holding the bejeweled crown. The other is you, Napoleon Bonaparte, first consul turned emperor, architect of your own destiny, standing on a stage you built, stone by painstaking stone. The moment arrives, the culmination of years of campaigns, political maneuvering, and relentless ambition. You are expected to kneel, to receive the crown from the pontiff's hands, symbolizing the divine approval that anointed monarchs for 1,000 years. Every eye in the cathedral, every significant figure in France, and indeed much of Europe, watches. But kneeling, that implies receiving power, not seizing it. It implies acknowledging a higher earthly authority, be it church or tradition, as the source of your legitimacy. This is not the narrative you have crafted. This is not the principle that has driven you from the rocky shores of Corsica to the pinnacle of European power. With a deliberate, steady stride, you step forward. You do not kneel. Instead, your hand reaches out, not in supplication, but in possession. You take the crown from the Pope's slightly trembling hands, a silent, almost imperceptible shift in power that screams louder than any cannonade. You turn your back on the altar, facing the assembled dignitaries, the representatives of your newly forged empire. You raise the heavy symbol of sovereignty and place it firmly upon your own head. The gesture is unambiguous. It says, "I am emperor, not by grace of God or the will of the Pope, but by my own will, my own strength, my own undeniable achievement." Then you turn to Josephine, your empress, who kneels before you. Gently, you place a smaller crown upon her head. It is an act of affection, yes, but also one more layer reinforcing the core message. Authority flows from you, not from God, not from the church, not even from the French people directly, but from the man standing here, holding the ultimate power. A hush falls over the vast cathedral, pregnant with the enormity of what has just occurred. Then a swell of applause rises, unsure at first, then deafening, as the assembled court understands and embraces the audacious declaration. This single audacious act is more than just a moment of theater. It is the defining statement of your reign. It is the physical embodiment of the imperial I, the principle that you answer to no one but yourself. You did not inherit this power. You took it. You did not receive divine sanction. You bypassed it, declaring yourself the source of legitimacy. This flies in the face of centuries of established order, a revolutionary act wrapped in the vestments of tradition. The insight here is stark. Unchecked ambition, convinced of its own exceptionalism, believes it exists outside the normal constraints of authority. This moment offers a crucial takeaway. While self-reliance and the courage to forge your own path are powerful virtues, believing you are utterly above all established authority, be it historical tradition, legal framework, or moral constraint, is the first perilous step towards isolation. The very crown you took, meant to solidify your power, immediately became a self-imposed burden, heavier than any divine right monarch ever wore, because its legitimacy rested solely on the continued, unwavering assertion of your individual will against a world built on different principles. It was an act of ultimate self-belief, yes, but in retrospect, also the clearest foreshadowing of the overreach that would eventually lead to your downfall. Ask yourself, was this a necessary act of revolutionary defiance and self-assertion? A stroke of political genius cementing a new era, or the ultimate expression of hubris, sowing the seeds of isolation and future resistance by placing one man's will above all else? The Senate votes. The Republic is dead. Long live the Emperor. With the stroke of a pen, the fragile scaffolding of the First Republic crumbles, replaced by a new throne, forged in ambition and secured by legions. You are no longer First Consul, but Napoleon I, Emperor of the French. The title isn't just ceremonial, it's a tectonic shift in your being, in your vision for France, and for the world. The rules change. You are the rule. Your gaze sweeps across Europe, seeing not sovereign nations, but pieces on a grand chessboard. Your relatives, a sometimes motley crew of siblings and in-laws, are suddenly candidates for crowns. Joseph to Naples and Spain, Louis to Holland, Jerome to Westphalia, Caroline to Naples, via Murat. You carve out kingdoms, duchies, and principalities, binding them to Paris, not by shared ideals, but by dynastic links and military might. Alliances are instruments to be played, discarded, or reshaped at your command. The map of Europe is a canvas for your imperial brushstrokes. This elevation transforms more than just borders. It transforms you. The calculated balancing act of the consulate the need to manage diverse political factions and public opinion begins to fade. Why listen to dissenting voices when your judgment is now, by decree, supreme? The complex machinery of state, once requiring careful calibration and compromise, simplifies. Now, the ultimate answer to any problem, any challenge, is your will. Your counselors speak, but their words increasingly sound like echoes in your own chamber of thought. You are becoming isolated at the summit, not because you are lonely, but because you no longer need to engage with perspectives that don't align with yours. Consider the stark contrast: the young general navigating the chaotic politics of the Directory, the first consul walking the tightrope between revolutionaries and royalists. That man thrived on understanding the currents, the nuances, the leverage points of human nature and political power. The emperor, however, stands above the currents. He no longer navigates. He commands the river to change course. This is the insidious trap of absolute power. It doesn't just corrupt. It prunes away complexity, leaving the leader in an echo chamber where their own voice is the only one that truly matters. The consequence is subtle at first, then devastating. Decisions become swifter, certainly. Grand ambitions are pursued without the friction of debate. But the subtle checks and balances provided by differing viewpoints are gone. The emperor sees his reflection in the polished surface of obsequious courtiers and compliant ministers, and that reflection increasingly looks like infallibility. Ask yourself, is this efficiency born of genius or the dangerous myopia of unchecked power? When you stand alone at the top, making unilateral decisions that shake continents, who tells you when you are blind? The world bends to your decree, yes, but the bending might just be a prelude to breaking, yourself included. This is the paradox. The more control you seize over others, the less control you may have over your own perceptions, your own grasp of reality. December 2nd, 1805. The air is frigid, mist clinging to the rolling hills around Austerlitz. Exactly 1 year ago, you were crowned emperor. Today, fate demands a different kind of reckoning. You stand on the Pratzen Heights, the ground you know intimately, a strategic heartland you deliberately conceded just days before. Below, spread across the valleys, are the combined forces of the Third Coalition, the armies of Austria and Russia, outnumbering your own by perhaps 15,000 men. Tsar Alexander I and Emperor Francis II believe you are weak, hesitant, stretched thin. They see a vulnerable right flank, seemingly begging to be enveloped, and they commit their reserves, their very strength, to this perceived weakness. This is not weakness, it is bait, a calculated gamble, a masterstroke of psychological warfare laid across a chessboard of frozen fields and expectant valleys. You have studied your opponents, young Alexander, eager for glory, advised by impatient, overconfident generals who see your feigned retreat on the right as a sign of fear. They descend from the Pratzen Heights, abandoning the high ground, drawn like moths to a candle by the prospect of rolling up your flank and cutting off your line of retreat towards Vienna. It is a maneuver as old as war itself, the turning of a flank. But in their haste, they overlook the fundamental truth. He who holds the heights often holds the day. As the sun, famously dubbed the Son of Austerlitz, begins to burn away the mist, illuminating the battlefield, the trap snaps shut. Your skeletal right flank, held by Davout's weary corps who forced march through the night, bends but does not break, fixing the enemy's attention. And then the pivot. While the coalition armies are entangled in the south, Soult's corps, hidden until now by the mist and terrain, surges forward directly up the Pratzen Heights. This is the dagger aimed at the heart of the enemy line, the undefended center left exposed by their greedy pursuit of your flank. You watch from Santon Hill as your veterans climb, appearing like specters from the lifting fog, falling upon the stunned enemy reserves who scramble desperately, belatedly, to retake the crucial plateau. The battle rages across the plains, a symphony of cannon fire, musket volleys, and cavalry charges. But the decisive blow has landed. With the Pratzen Heights secured, your forces split the Allied army in two, rolling up their flanks simultaneously. The enemy dissolves into chaos. Divisions are routed, fleeing across frozen lakes where, according to lore, cannon fire shatters the ice, sending hundreds to their icy deaths. A brutal, perhaps exaggerated, but potent image of total destruction. It is not just a victory, it is an annihilation. The Battle of the Three Emperors is over by early afternoon, a complete, crushing triumph that secures your reputation as the greatest military mind of the age. Europe stares in stunned silence. The mighty Austrian and Russian empires are humiliated. The Holy Roman Empire is dissolved shortly thereafter, replaced by your Confederation of the Rhine. Treaties are signed in your favor. Lands are ceded. Alliances shattered. This victory, fought on the anniversary of your coronation, feels less like a mere battle and more like a divine endorsement of your imperial project. It confirms, in your eyes, the absolute rightness of your path, the invincibility of your will, the undeniable power of your genius. Austerlitz is not just the zenith of your military career. It is the moment you truly begin to believe you possess the Midas touch, that everything you touch turns to gold, that fortune itself is subservient to your command. And here lies the profound, terrifying insight. Unparalleled success can be the most insidious poison. Austerlitz was a masterpiece of planning, deception, and execution, yes. It was tactical brilliance honed by years of experience. But the sheer totality of the victory, the humiliation of two emperors, the prostrate state of the continent afterwards, this level of triumph can breed an arrogance that whispers you are no longer bound by the same rules as other men, that your intuition is infallible, your destiny unbreakable. The takeaway from Austerlitz should have been a cold, analytical dissection. Why did you win? Because the enemy was overconfident. Because your troops executed a complex plan flawlessly. Because Devoe held the line. Because Soult seized the heights. Instead, the overwhelming conclusion drawn is simpler, more dangerous. Because you are Napoleon. Ask yourself, when you achieve your greatest success, does it teach you humility by showing you the complex factors involved? Or does it convince you that your own innate genius is the sole, unstoppable force? Austerlitz was the sun reaching its highest point, brilliant and powerful, but blinding in its glare. It illuminated the path forward while simultaneously obscuring the potential pitfalls, planting the first, tiny, almost imperceptible seed of hubris that would, years later, grow into a forest of costly errors. The taste of absolute victory was intoxicating, confirming everything you believed about yourself. The possibility that it was also laying the groundwork for future downfall was, for now, utterly unimaginable. You stand at the pinnacle. The battlefield map of Europe is a vast canvas, where your will is painted in bold strokes of red. Victory after victory has solidified your grip, not just on lands, but on the very idea of command. But as power expands, so too does the shadow it casts. Now, your grand designs begin to fray, less anchored in the pragmatic ground of reality, and more in the ethereal realm of absolute will. The most colossal of these ambitions is the continental system. Picture a vast, invisible wall thrown around Europe, a decree aimed squarely at the island nation across the Channel, Britain. No trade, no goods, a total blockade designed to cripple the economic heart of your relentless enemy. It is a brilliant, almost poetic concept, starving the seaborne empire from the land. Yet, in practice, it becomes a Gordian knot of unenforceable decrees. Smuggling flourishes like weeds. Ports stand idle, ships rot at anchor. And the gears of European commerce grind to a halt. Instead of crippling Britain, which finds new markets elsewhere, the system chokes the very economies you now preside over, sparking resentment in cities from Hamburg to Rome. It is the ultimate irony, a weapon turned inward, poisoning the well from which your own power flows. This rigidity extends beyond economics. Your treatment of allies and conquered territories shifts from strategic calculation to demanding imposition. Spain, a nominal ally, is invaded and your brother placed on its throne, sparking a brutal, draining guerrilla war. Prussia, humbled at Jena-Auerstedt, is bled dry by crippling indemnities and military occupation. You carve out new kingdoms, placing loyal relatives in charge, disregarding local customs, laws, and desires. You demand not just resources and soldiers, but absolute obedience, treating sovereign states like recalcitrant provinces. The subtle art of diplomacy and compromise, once a tool in your ascent, is discarded like a broken sword. This is where the deep, silent current shifts. When you believe you can command the very flow of oceans, the very rhythm of economies, you stop listening to the whispers of discontent, the rumbling undercurrents of resistance. Your genius, forged in adaptability and keen observation, begins to be consumed by the furnace of your own ego. The strategic mind that saw the battlefield not just as terrain, but as a psychological space, now sees the world as merely an extension of personal will. The insight is chillingly clear. Unchecked power, left to its own devices, divorces itself from reality, substituting wish for fact. What would you have done with that much unchecked power, facing a continent bending to your knee, but bristling with silent anger? This period is a stark lesson. Power requires not just strength, but a deep well of empathy and the humility to adapt. Rigidity and a disregard for the interests of others are not signs of strength, but the subtle seeds of future conflict, sown in the very soil of victory. The air in Madrid is thick with simmering resentment, a stark contrast to the celebratory plumes of Paris. You made a choice, a kingly decree delivered from afar. Your brother, Joseph, will sit upon the ancient throne of Spain. You see it as a strategic necessity, another piece on the grand chessboard of Europe, falling under your sway, tying the Iberian Peninsula into the continental system, choking off British trade. But Spain is not a vacant chair waiting for a Bonaparte. It is a proud nation, steeped in its own history, its own faith, its own fiercely independent spirit. You vastly underestimate the depth of their attachment to their deposed monarchy and the Catholic Church. seeing only political weakness where a volcano of national pride lies dormant. The moment Joseph arrives, the volcano erupts. This is not the formal set-piece warfare you mastered at Austerlitz or Jena. This is something primal, savage, deeply personal. The Spanish people rise up in a brutal, relentless guerra de guerrillas, little war. Farmers, priests, bandits, women, they become shadows, striking from the mountains and forests, melting back into the population. Convoys vanish. Isolated garrisons are massacred. Messengers disappear. There are no fronts, only omnipresent, invisible hostility. Your proud imperial army, built for glorious charges and decisive battles, finds itself bogged down in a morass of ambushes, assassinations, and cruel retributions. You pour hundreds of thousands of troops into this inferno, and they simply dissolve into the landscape, devoured by the constant friction of insurgency. Britain, seeing an opportunity, lands an expeditionary force under Wellesley, the future Duke of Wellington, providing crucial support, supplies, and conventional military challenges alongside the popular uprising. You call Spain the Spanish ulcer, a festering wound that bleeds your empire dry. It is a perfect, bitter irony. You came to bring order and enforce loyalty, and instead you ignite a firestorm of defiance. The resources diverted here, men, money, cannons, are resources not available for campaigns in Central Europe or against Russia. This war is not won by capturing capitals. It's a war for control of the roads, the villages, the very loyalty of the people. A war you are losing, street by bloody street. It's a profound failure to understand that military might, however overwhelming on paper, cannot crush the will of a people determined not to be ruled by a foreign power, however strategically sound your reasons might seem. You learn, at immense cost, that culture, identity, and popular resistance are forces as formidable as any grand army. Consider this: was the Spanish ulcer a consequence of strategic ambition gone blind, or a fatal misjudgment of a nation's soul? What lessons does this bloody quagmire hold for the summer of 1812? You stand at the Niemen River, contemplating not just a river, but the boundary of a world you believe you can conquer. Before you stretches Russia, vast, silent, and seemingly ripe for a quick, decisive blow. Behind you is the Grande Armée, a machine of unprecedented scale, 500,000 men, the largest military force ever assembled in Europe's long, bloody history. Confidence is a current running through the ranks, a reflection of your own certainty. You envision Moscow, a quick victory, a negotiated peace on your terms. This feels less like war, more like a grand, inevitable parade towards destiny. But Russia does not play by your rules. They offer no grand battles to shatter your army in one swift stroke. Instead, they retreat, trading land for time, drawing your massive force deeper into their colossal, unforgiving interior. The scorched earth policy begins. Farms are burned, wells poisoned, cities evacuated before you arrive. Your supply lines, stretched thin across hundreds of miles, become fragile threads in a hostile wilderness. You push on, driven by the belief that sheer will and the legend of your invincibility will bend this empire to your command. Moscow is reached, but it is a burning, hollow prize, offering no surrender, only ashes and defiance. Then, the true enemy arrives. Not cavalry, not infantry, but the biting wind, The relentless snow, the plunging temperatures. General winter descends, an adversary you cannot outmaneuver, outfight, or outthink. The retreat begins, an unimaginable horror show across frozen plains. Soldiers freeze in their sleep, horses collapse, artillery is abandoned in the snow. Order dissolves into a desperate scramble for survival. The Grande Armée is not defeated in battle, it is consumed by the elements and the sheer, unyielding emptiness of the land. What began as a triumph of ambition ends as a death march of unprecedented scale. This was more than a military failure. It was the brutal consequence of boundless confidence meeting insurmountable reality. You believed your self-made destiny was so powerful it could command nature, override geography, and break the spirit of a nation fighting for its very existence. The insight is chillingly clear. Even absolute power has limits. There are forces, natural, human, existential, that sheer force of will cannot overcome. This campaign, the most devastating defeat of your career, screams a timeless warning. Know your limits, listen to the whispers of caution, and understand that some walls cannot be breached by ambition alone. Ask yourself now, looking at that frozen retreat, was this still the hand of destiny, or simply man foolishly challenging God and nature? The icy grip of the Russian winter has finally loosened its hold on Europe, but the frost has settled into the bones of your empire. The disaster, the sheer, unimaginable scale of the retreat from Moscow, has shattered the aura of your invincibility. It wasn't just the loss of men and horses, it was the loss of belief. Your enemies, long cowering in the shadows of your power, now see their chance. The coalitions you faced before were fractured, hesitant. This time, they are emboldened, unified by a common cause, to dismantle the empire you built, stone by ambitious stone. You stand on the precipice in 1813, the grand chessboard of Europe shifting dramatically against you. At Leipzig, the battle of the nations, the sheer weight of their combined might proves overwhelming. Your marshals fight valiantly, your soldiers show their legendary courage, but the numbers, the resources, the sheer, relentless pressure of a continent united against you is too much. The tide has turned, decisively and perhaps irrevocably. The once unstoppable engine of the Grande Armée sputters, its fuel of endless victory depleted. The coalition forces push relentlessly into France itself. Paris falls. The Senate, once your rubber stamp, now declares your deposition. The marshals, the men who fought and bled at your side, confront you at Fontainebleau. The air is thick with unspoken truths and the scent of defeat. They speak of peace, of sparing France further suffering. They speak of abdication. It is a bitter draught to swallow, a recognition that the power you seized, forged in revolution and war, has been stripped away, not just by foreign armies, but by the erosion of support at home and the sheer exhaustion of 2 decades of relentless conflict. On April 11th, 1814, you signed the Treaty of Fontainebleau. The Emperor of the French, the King of Italy, the protector of the Confederation of the Rhine, becomes the sovereign of Elba, a tiny island off the coast of Tuscany. The contrast is stark, brutal, almost absurd. From ruling millions, dictating terms to emperors and kings, to governing a population smaller than a single Parisian district. It is a precipitous fall, a dramatic illustration of how quickly power, even absolute power, can evaporate when the military might that underpins it is broken and the political will of the governed, or even just the elite, turns against you. Ask yourself, is this just the consequence of failure, or the inherent fragility of power built solely on conquest? The most poignant scene unfolds in the courtyard of Fontainebleau. You stand before the soldiers of the Old Guard, the grizzled veterans who followed you through snow and sun, through victory and retreat. Your voice, usually commanding, breaks. You speak of farewell, of sacrifice, of hope for France. These men, many weeping openly, kiss your hand, the eagle's standard. It is a moment of profound human connection amidst political catastrophe, a testament to the loyalty you could inspire, even in defeat. Yet it is also heavy with tragic irony. These men, who would follow you to the ends of the earth, are now left behind while you are exiled to an island that is, in the grand scheme of the world you once dominated, little more than a postage stamp. This tearful farewell is the emotional core of your immediate downfall, a stark image of the isolation that unchecked ambition ultimately brings, leaving you with loyal memories but no practical power. The lesson is etched in the faces of those veterans. The higher you climb, the harder you fall, and sometimes all that remains is the echo of past glory and the loyalty of the few who stayed until the bitter end. Now the grand opera of your life stages its final stark act. Waterloo was the thunderclap that scattered the last remnants of empire. You find yourself far from the glittering courts and dusty battlefields, on a lonely volcanic rock in the South Atlantic, St. Helena. The winds that once carried your fleets across the sea now merely buffet your isolated dwelling. You are a prisoner, not of a coalition of emperors, but of the world itself, represented by the often petty authority of Governor Hudson Lowe. Every restriction, every slight, every argument over firewood or visitors feels like a deliberate erosion of the colossal figure you once were. Stripped of power, stripped of armies, stripped even of privacy, you have only one weapon left: narrative. You begin to dictate, tirelessly, compulsively. The Memorial de Sainte-Hélène is not merely a memoir, it is a final campaign. You craft your image with the same strategic precision you applied to the battlefield. You are the man of destiny, betrayed by subordinates, thwarted by unforeseen circumstances, a revolutionary misunderstood by the old world. You present yourself as a martyr to the cause of national sovereignty and the people, a Prometheus bound by the forces of reaction. This is the birth of the Napoleonic legend, carefully curated in exile. It is a profound, almost tragic irony. The man who commanded millions finds his ultimate victory on paper, in the stories he tells about himself. Was this final act self-deception, or a final, desperate gamble to shape history's judgment? You have years to reflect on the impossible heights reached and the crushing fall endured. Was it fate, an unchangeable destiny? Was it the betrayal you keenly felt from former allies and marshals? Or was the seed of your downfall sown long before, in the very act of placing the crown upon your own head? The trajectory from Corsican outsider to Emperor of France, and then to this remote prison, offers a chilling lesson on the razor's edge between soaring ambition and destructive hubris. What happens when similar unchecked ambition rises today, armed not with cannons, but with digital tools and global reach? The echoes are unsettling. You yourself, perhaps with the wariness only a dethroned emperor can know, mused, Ambition is never content, even with the highest eminence. But perhaps the most profound echo, seen from the desolate shores of St. Helena after the glory of Notre Dame, is the silent lesson carried by the waves around your prison. True greatness, untethered from self-awareness, breeds not lasting empire, but ultimately only exile. The story of Napoleon, from the dust of Ajaccio to the lonely stone of St. Helena, is more than a tale of battles and empires. It is a stark human saga etched in the enduring tension between what we reach for and what we truly understand about ourselves. It is the ultimate caution written in the tides around a tiny island. In the end, it wasn't just the world that defeated him, it was believing his own legend.